the imposition of a law that will punish non-Muslim Britons more harshly than Muslims for the same crimes.
Mhm.
And that's pure Sharia. Sharia has the Muslims in a privileged position and the non-Muslims subordinate. And so they're already imposing. And of course, you can't criticize Islam. You'll go to prison. You know, there were people who were protesting a few months ago and making chants about Islam and Allah, criticizing. They're in prison.
This episode is brought to you by our Revo Report Patreon. Join our community to get first access to interviews, Bible study guides, devotionals, and prayer books for adults, youth, families, and marriages. Plus, resources on Christian living, leadership, sermon prep, exclusive Q&As, online Bible studies, and even one-on-one coaching or counseling. Visit patreon.com/Vince Revo and grow in faith and truth with us. Just charting the data and analyzed the population growth, right? And so I think the data, if you project forward by 2070, I think is when there'll be that shift where the Christian population will now be less than the Muslim population, and then it pretty much just explodes from there. It just kind of goes parabolic after that, if things don't change, if things continue in the trajectory that we're going. What you mentioned demographic conquest. What is that exactly?
Well, it's like Gaddafi said it, you know, we will conquer Europe by the wombs of our women. And you actually just said it yourself with by 2070, there'll be a Muslim majority. Look at Britain. That's only like 10% Muslim now. And yet there is already the imposition of a law that will punish non-Muslim Britons more harshly than Muslims for the same crimes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pure Sharia. Sharia has the Muslims in a privileged position and the non-Muslims subordinate. And so they're already imposing. And of course, you can't criticize Islam. You'll go to prison. You know, there were people who were protesting a few months ago and making chants about Islam and Allah, criticizing. They're in prison. And this is just only with 10%. Imagine what it'll be like when you have a Muslim majority. And so this is a very big problem, because people don't realize that Islam is not just a religion. It's not just a matter of what church you go to. You know, like I used to go to a Catholic church and now I go to an Orthodox church. It's not like that. If you have a Muslim majority and most people in the country are Muslims, you're going to have calls for an Islamic state. And an Islamic state will institutionalize a second-class status for the non-Muslims. It's not just a matter of, oh, we have people, you know, we have more Methodists now than Baptists. And a while ago, we had more Baptists. It's not like that at all. To have a majority of Muslims, it's a massive transformation of society.
Wow. So do you travel to the UK? I'm just curious.
No, I'm not allowed. I'm barred from the country. I said that Islam has doctrines of warfare against unbelievers, which is absolutely true. But I got a letter from the UK Home Office saying, because you said Islam has doctrines of warfare against unbelievers, you can't come into the UK.
Why? Wow. And what can Canada do? What can the US do? Can the EU do anything now to reverse that trend?
Oh, sure. They could say they're going to stand up for their cultural and historical identity, but they'll never do that because that would be Nazi or something. And so it'll never happen. But that's what they could do. And it's not Nazi at all. The Nazis killed the people that they hated and did all manner of terrible atrocities. Nobody is calling for that in Europe, and it's not necessary to do. All you need to do is say, Germany is the place where the Germans live. And so if you are not a citizen of Germany, we're going to invite you to leave. And we're going to make incentives for you to leave, or we may require you to leave if you're a criminal. And then if you are a citizen of Germany and you are not willing to assimilate, then we're going to prosecute. If you are advocating for Germany to adopt Sharia, then we're going to prosecute. We're not going to tolerate this. We're going to maintain our character, that our national character that we have had from time immemorial. But that's been completely stigmatized. It's okay for everybody else, every other country in the world. You know, I have a friend, an old friend from New York, who he married a woman from Peru, and he moved to Peru. And he's lived there for decades. And he's got children who are to all intents and purposes, native Peruvians, except that their dad's an American. And he told me that his children are not Peruvians. The Peruvian government doesn't even give them full citizenship because their father is American. Because the Peruvians are very concerned to maintain Peru's national identity. And nobody tells the Peruvians, hey, you're terrible racists. Nobody says that. Nobody says anything's wrong with that. It's just the Peruvians maintaining their national identity and character. And more power to them. But if the Americans do that, or the British or the Germans, it's somehow some terrible racist thing. Well, this has been a concerted effort, a skillfully done propaganda effort by leftists to help them create the international socialist order. And the Muslims are taking advantage of it, and the leftists want them to take advantage of it because Islam inculcates total obedience to the authoritarian ruler, and they want that. The left wants that. So they are working together to destroy the national character of the various Western states. And of course, that makes perfect sense because the leading countries in the world, politically, economically, militarily, that's the United States and the countries of Western Europe. I love Peru. I love Peruvians. But if Peru were to lose its national character, that would not be a huge world-shaking event. But for England or the US or Canada, Germany, that's a world-shaking event. And then all the rest will fall in line. And that's why they're targeting them.
Wow. Wow. You just put it in a very global perspective there.
Mm-hmm.
So how can, at a ground level then, Robert, how can Christians, have this discuss Jesus to Muslims while not compromising the truth, but also, how do you win them over? Because it seems like for Muslims, at least here in Toronto, they are very trained to combat Christian doctrine, and they're very trained in Christian apologetics. But most Christians, whether you're Anglican or Orthodox or Catholic or Protestant, whatever, they don't seem equipped to be able to do that. And one of my friends said that the issue is that nominal Christians are being converted to Islam, but
Yes.
Christians are not converting Muslims.
Yes, and they're against it. If I had stayed in the Catholic Church and said I want to start a Catholic organization to evangelize among Muslims, then bishops would have stopped me because they don't want that. They want dialogue, and they think dialogue will fix it. Dialogue is a big illusion. I mentioned that before. I won't repeat myself, but the fact is, they are not carrying out the Great Commission because they think that it's wrong and that they have to speak with Muslims in terms of a common give and take without trying to convert them to Christianity. Now, the fact is, though, that as you noted, the Muslims are aggressively converting Christians. If the churches want to survive, aside from some supernatural act by the Lord, which of course I'm not ruling out, but I don't know what the mind of God is, obviously. If the churches want to survive, they need to drop the dialogue and start to equip their people to deal with Muslim efforts to convert them to Islam, and equip them to be able to deal with Muslims, to talk to Muslims and show them why Christianity is true and Islam is false. There are lots of ways to do that. We could go into that here, but they just need to do that in the first place and stop just acting as if that's not necessary or somehow offensive. They need to recognize that the Muslims are trying to convert Christians, equip their people to withstand that and maintain their Christian faith, but also equip them to talk to Muslims and convert them to Christianity. They need to send teams who are equipped to do this into Europe, into all the countries of Europe, to talk to the Muslims, but also to talk to the Christians and to recall them to their faith, call them back to their faith, and show them why their faith matters and why it's important for them to recover it at this time. Because there are massive numbers of people who are Christians in Europe who are no longer observing the faith. So, you could say, well, they're not Christians then. Fine. But they are of Christian heritage. Their grandparents were Christians. Their parents were Christians. They've lost the faith. They need to be brought back. The churches need to, all the churches, Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant, need to make up their minds that this is a very important work